All righty. So we should be live for Friday Career Lunch Break. Hi, Tim Slade.
Hey, Erin, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to
Good.
be here with you. Everybody, this is my
Yeah,
friend Tim Slade.
this is my friend
Um,
Erin.
yeah, and we go way back. Not really,
No.
but we've become fast friends through LinkedIn. We had the wonderful connection. It's talking about like two people who are kind of in the same orbital
Yeah.
space, but we never really crossed paths. And then um, I had a client who kind of needed to do some work before he was ready to make a pivot, and he found his way to you. And when he came back, I was blown away
Mm.
by the transformation he had gone through and caused me to reach out. And we started talking and cut to the chase. We had dinner together in Arizona a couple weeks ago. And I was like, got to come on and be a guest here. So we're going to talk about some good stuff. But Tim, before we get started, one thing Tim and I said is we made an agreement. We're not talking about basic instructional design stuff, and we are not
Mhm.
talking about resumes
Mm.
because we talk about that all the time. So, Tim, tell everybody, who you are, what you do, all that kind of stuff, a little bit about your background, just so we can get that out of the way, and then we're going to talk about the good stuff.
Yeah. So, obviously, I work in the industry of instructional design and e-learning development, and I've been doing that for over 15 years now. And I run a community platform called the E-Learning Designers Academy, which is a platform of free resources, my book, courses. It's all geared around helping new instructional designers and e-learning developers grow their careers by focusing on their skills first. And I started that in 2019 when I ditched my corporate life and went into freelancing. And I have a really unique background because I think a lot of folks in this industry and those who are trying to get into it, I pivoted into it by accident. I used to catch shoplifters for a living, and I have a degree in criminal justice. And someone was like, "Hey, you should be teaching others how to do that." And that's how I got into it. And the rest is kind of history. And here I am talking to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you
No,
said
you didn't know that?
so
Oh,
what
yeah.
okay, so first question. What are some of the key signs you look for when someone is shoplifting?
That's a great question. The best shoplifters, if I were to go shoplift today, let's say I was going to go shoplift, I would walk in and grab the thing that I wanted as if it was mine, and I would confidently walk out as if it were mine, and I'd be in and out in 2 minutes. The
Really?
the worst shoplifters, they have to like hype themselves up for it because they're nervous and they're usually like 16-year-old kids, and they'll just start showing all these signs because they're.
Yeah,
Um,
nervous and
they're nervous. Yeah.
they're twitchy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's something that I didn't think we were going to cover right at the
That's
onset, but
okay. I have
here.
so many shoplifter stories. I've had people, like, poop their pants when I've caught them shoplifting. I've had people pull out knives on me. And I'm the most unassuming person to be like, "Hey, stop. You're shoplifting," so they don't I'm an unexpected, law enforcement person for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining the whole world of instructional design has been a little more chill,
Yeah, it's not
or
as
in different
exciting.
ways, or crazy in different
But you know what? I
ways.
still I still have my eye for catching shoplifters. Like, I'll be in a
Yeah.
Target with my partner, and I'll be like, "That bitch is shoplifting," and I'm like, "Hold on, I'm gonna go watch her," and then I'll follow her around the store, and I'll just, because I still have it in me.
Yeah, never goes
Yeah,
away.
it does not go away. No,
All
not
right,
at all.
let's segue really clumsily into something here because you and I, when we had dinner, one of the things we talked about, and one of the things that I really like that you talk about a lot is imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know that comes up a lot. Like there's part of it, like you say that phrase, and like it almost gives me a little bit of ick because I feel like it gets thrown around a lot. Like, oh, it's your imposter
Mm,
syndrome, it's your imposter. But like the reality of how that shows up for people and like I don't know, like the in theory versus in practice comparison. So I don't
mm.
know if maybe we could start because you're somebody who's been really successful. And I
Thank you.
think a lot of times we were talking about Reddit, okay? And we were talking about right before we went live, if you show up on there or I show up on there, people will say, "Oh, it's Tim." Like Tim showed up. Like eh, and you're like, I don't feel
I'm
like I'm
just a
anybody
dude working out of my
special.
extra bedroom. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so I think there's like this perception that people think that other people have some version of figured out
Mm,
that the rest of us don't have, or there's a secret or something. So I
yeah.
guess like talk to me a little bit about imposter syndrome. Like, do you feel imposter syndrome? When was the last time you felt imposter syndrome? Maybe just to bring it down to real life. And then, what do you tell people about it?
Yeah, I think, Imposter syndrome is a really great convenient term for a whole host of emotions that you experience when you're feeling insecure or not as successful as you want to be feeling, or whatever it is that's like spurring this sense of insecurity. And I think, I posted a video earlier this week about self comparison and how when we have this magical ability when we're doing something to go find that one person who's doing it better than us, or who's doing it the way we want to be doing it, or as that more perceived, we perceive them as having more success than us. And we, in that moment, we compare ourselves against the end result of their journey, but we're not really getting a full picture of what they went through to get there. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
social media and LinkedIn does a really great job of feeding those insecurities, because people only share the great, amazing stuff and the outcomes of their work, but they don't really share the times that they were up until 2 in the morning freaking out about their business. That I do that a lot. Or, I was talking to a freelancer yesterday and she's like, I regularly go out into my backyard and I go cry by the creek that runs through my backyard. And I'm like, and she's like, I went out there the other day and the creek was dry. And she's like, this is a sign of something. And I'm like, yeah, I totally get all of those emotions. And so, my point in saying that is that, I think imposter syndrome is it simply, a lot of times it's oversimplified as this like feeling of like I don't belong, or I'm in a place I'm not supposed to be, or who am I to be doing this or that or the other thing. And I feel those things all of the time. I felt them when I fell into this industry, having caught shoplifters, and now I was working in training and instructional design, not knowing what any of
Mhm.
that was. I felt that when I got my first promotion. I felt that when I started leading a team. I got that when I started speaking at conferences. I feel that way when I started my business. I feel that way today. I feel that way all of the time. You have those moments. And the thing that I have learned is that your imposter syndrome is not it never goes away. There's always a
Mhm.
semblance of it's going to pop up and rear its head at you. But really what it is for me, the way I've reframed it, is that when I'm feeling a sense of imposter syndrome, it's actually a good thing, because it means that I am doing something outside my comfort zone, and it means that I'm growing. And I like to view imposter syndrome as not a feeling of insecurity or inadequacy or not belonging, but rather a sign that I actually want to do good, a sign of I'm self aware that I have room to grow. And if I can like embrace that feeling of like, yep, I don't know it all, I still have room to grow, I'm self aware of that, then that leads me down the right path. And I think that that takes a lot of effort and time and consciousness to think about that, rather than letting it paralyze you. Does that make any
Yeah.
sense?
It makes a ton of sense, actually. So, like, full disclosure, imposter syndrome here too. One of the things, like,
Yeah.
I'm getting on a video with you, and I'm looking at this, going, "Wow, Tim's got a really great video set up here. Like, it's so good. Like, the color is nice in the background, and you're framed nicely, and like, that's not my area of specialty." And so I'm looking at it, going, "Oh, I probably should be changing this, or mine doesn't look as good." Or and so right away, like, one, it's causing me to not be present for the thing that I'm actually here to enjoy, which is a nice conversation.
Mm.
And two, those things are solvable. Those are solvable things. And I'm sure there was one point where you started out with your video and audio, and you weren't doing that when you were
I mean,
identifying shoplifters, right? So you had to go learn that at some point too. It's just you've learned it and I haven't, but it's learnable.
it's totally
And
learnable, and, like, you go back, I encourage everybody to, like, go to my YouTube channel and then, like, reverse the order to go back, look at my first videos,
yeah.
and they were shit. I didn't have lighting. I had, like, a webcam, and the lighting was bad, and, like, my chin was like this. You saw the whole thing, and it wasn't lit well, and, like, so, like, yeah, that's the thing, like, you see this, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, she's got his shit together." It's like, yeah, but you don't know how much crap I went through,
Right.
or how much crappy videos I created, or how much I had to spend and experiment and try and tweak until I figured
Yeah.
that like what worked for me, right? And that's a great example of like you're seeing the end result of years of crappy video and
Yeah.
not knowing how to do it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that does tie into that video. If people haven't seen that video I think you just did it like a day or two ago,
Yeah,
but
just like yesterday, the
yeah,
day
I don't
before.
know,
Yeah.
my week,
Yeah.
it's blurred together, but um, you said something in there about and I find myself saying this too about consistency. And you said,
Mm,
how does somebody make it to where they are when we're looking at somebody's end result and we're comparing it to where we're at right now? Oftentimes, it starts to feel very like they're there and I'm just here and like how and this can never happen. But it's the doing things consistently. And I love that you said that because I often find myself like people will ask me, how do you set goals, or what business books do you read, or what really has helped you, or and if I'm being honest, I think it's just really it's like good inputs that I believe in over time and not quitting. It's
yeah, I
consistently showing up and being like, well, F that one up. Guess I'm gonna have to go do that differently. Oh, that didn't go the way I thought. Guess I'm gonna have to change that. Um, Asking for help, all those types of things. So that imposter syndrome piece and the consistency piece, I think it's like imposter syndrome should really be about possibility
mhm.
because it's possible for you. And it's like if you're willing to show up consistently and keep doing the work, you can get there.
Yeah, I did a keynote last year, in the fall, and it was on a lot of these topics, and one of the things that I opened up the keynote with was that, like, when you look at somebody, you look at somebody you admire or somebody who you perceive as doing it better than you think, or somebody who's way further along their journey than you are, you think that you make all of these assumptions that they followed some master plan or they expertly executed something in order to get there. And, the more experience you gain in the world or in the corporate world, or you start meeting with these people that you really deeply admire and you think, oh, they got this figured out, the more that you quickly discover that nobody really knows what the fuck they're doing. And we're all just like faking it to one extent or another. And that really, to
Yeah.
your point, like I get asked that same question. People are like, I want to be like you when you grow up, and like, how did you do this? And how did you figure this out? And da 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 da. And they want you, what they really, a lot of times what they're asking is to take your 15 years of failures and mistakes and trial and error and all of that stuff and like condense it down to like the 3-point checklist that's going to get them there. When the reality is like, no, I just did a lot of crap for years and years and years. A lot of it failed, some of it worked, and I kept doing more of the stuff that worked, and I just did it consistently. And it
Yeah.
took me 15 years. I didn't
Yeah.
get into this industry from catching shoplifters thinking, "Oh yeah, I'm going to pop out a book," and or do any of this stuff. Like if you would have even said 5 years ago I'd be doing this stuff I'm doing now, I've been like,
Yeah.
are you high?" So it's just I have this saying, it's consistency and dedication and hard work and time and patience. All of those things create events that other people perceive as just luck,
Mhm.
and there yeah, and sometimes there is luck, but a lot of times it's just a lot of hard work and consistency.
Yeah. Well, there's that old saying, it's what? The harder I work, the luckier I get, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I mean, there is something to that where if you stay committed to something and you're making you're not letting up on it simply because something didn't go the way you hoped it went the first time. Because I also think
Mhm.
that really, I've seen that, in my own career in many ways, I've seen that catch people, whether it's a job search thing or whether it's a professional career. It's like something didn't work right or the way I thought it should go the first time. Therefore, fail. Therefore, do not try again.
Yeah.
And that's a really dangerous cycle. And, it's something I'm trying to teach my kids because I still think traditional schooling, a lot of times, if you don't get an A, you failed, you did a bad job, be disappointed
Yeah.
in yourself.
Yeah,
And
we stigmatize failure. Like the further you get into school and then into the workforce, in higher education, we stigmatize failure, and it prevents us from taking risks. And and when we don't take risks and we don't fail, it prevents us from learning. And I think, one of the things I think a lot about, one of the reasons I decided to leave my corporate job,
mhm,
after doing that for ever and ever and ever, is one of the things that I always hated was during like performance review season, or as you're setting your goals for your
mhm,
professional development or what have you. My boss would always want to talk about, okay, let's find your areas of opportunity and let's work on those. And I always felt like, well, you know what? My areas of opportunity are areas of opportunity probably because I don't like doing that shit, or I'm not there's a reason I'm not good at it, and
Yeah.
why don't we focus on making me better at the things that I love? And
Right.
to your point about failure, the thing I tell myself about failure is that I would any day of the week, I would rather fail doing the things that I love and I'm passionate about than succeeding at things that I hate, because there's nothing to be learned from succeeding at the stuff that you hate. But, like, failing at something I love, I can learn from that and I can improve from that. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, and you come back from it too. I mean,
Mhm.
there's some intangible thing that when you're doing something you love, like a lot of times people ask me, well, I have a day job. So how do I do all this coaching stuff on the side? And I'm like, how could I not? Because I love the testing and the learning and the trying and the doing and I am the start, the middle, and the end of every single thing I decide to do. And I love that
Mm,
because there's so much risk and so much reward, but you kind of keep coming back for more because it's fun. And
yeah,
when something is not fun or you're just sort of like that willpower, like willing it to happen, and you know that it's not in harmony with something in you, I I don't think something like that is sustainable long term.
no.
Which I guess goes to the point of, I know we're not talking too much about pivots, but I see that a lot in people where it's like they just get this idea that they want the end result, but they haven't really thought about what that journey is going to look like or what that's going to entail and the level of effort that might be coming with that. And then when it gets hard and it's not easily successful, then it feels like, well, I'm an imposter and it's imposter syndrome. And so I can't do it because I feel like an imposter, therefore I should quit. And I think that's the ick that I get from imposter syndrome is it's sometimes it's a quitter's excuse.
Yeah,
And but not for everybody, to be clear. I
yeah,
think sometimes it's like what you do with that feeling. Do you harness that feeling and then say, this means I'm going somewhere new. This means I'm doing something bigger than I'm used to doing. This means I'm outside of my comfort zone. There's a woman who I know who says, she says the phrase, do it sweaty. And what she means by that is she gets super sweaty armpits. And so when she starts to sweat like crazy, it's from like her nerves and she's kind of amped
yeah,
up. And so she's like, I'm doing it sweaty because I'm like super hyped and I'm like probably feel like I'm going to puke a little bit, but like I'm going to
yeah.
go because this is at the edge of where I am right now. And so this is how I get better.
I totally
And
relate to I get sweaty too. I talk.
I'm not a sweaty person at least, so I
Oh,
can't really
I'm
say
jealous.
that
I am
one,
such a
but
sweaty person. Like, I've tried everything to, like, prevent the sweat. But I'm sweating now. I get sweaty when I talk, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
That's so funny. It's probably the lighting though, if I'm being
yeah.
honest.
It's all
That's
those hot lights.
the
I mean, you
cost of the
look great
beauty.
though, so we can't see the sweat and you look illuminated
Thank you.
perfectly, so
I think, I think to your point, when we talk about like
I don't
career
know.
pivoters,
Yeah,
I think you got to really be thoughtful about. I think it's easy for people if they're not intentional about what they're doing and having being thoughtful about what they're running towards rather than focusing on what they're running away from. You can quickly contrive your own imposter syndrome because you're running towards something that maybe wasn't really meant for you because you're too focused
yeah,
on what are you running from. You know what I mean? Not what
yeah,
you're running towards.
yeah, yeah. It's a good mental image, isn't it? You're running staring backwards, you're gonna run right into a wall.
Yeah, and you'll
So,
be like, "Where'd that wall come from?"
yeah,
It's
and
like you weren't
yeah.
looking.
If you were looking, you would have seen that. The rest of us all did.
Yeah, we were all watching it happen, yeah.
With our popcorn.
I
No, not with popcorn.
know.
Um, so, I mean, tell me this because this is another one, and I don't know. I mean, again, how to connect this. I hear this
That's
a
fine.
lot too. With you talk a lot. You say it better than me, so we're gonna make you say it
Okay.
about being selfish. Okay,
Mm,
you have just like a really nice way of talking about being selfish,
yeah.
and because I think there's a negative connotation to selfishness just in general. You hear that word and you're like, oh, that's like not a good person. But tell me about being selfish and what that
Mm.
looks like.
I think, I'll tell you the story of how I learned this and then how I've tried to help others and embody this mindset. So, uh, back in 2015, 2016, I had this really great job. That it paid okay, but the work was really good and passionate. I had the best work life balance I'd ever had in my life at this particular job. And then Somebody came knocking on my door to work at this other company to lead a team, and I didn't need the job, but I was intrigued by it. I wanted to make some more money. It offered some more growth and all that stuff. But it would take me back into like the deep corporate world, and I was nervous about that. And so I went into this interview with no expectations. I'm like, I don't need this job, so I'm just gonna go in and see what happens. And I'm gonna go through this whole interview process, and I'm just gonna advocate for myself and my needs and my wants. And I think for a lot of people, and this is really hard mindset, especially when you're really needing a job. So I recognize that first off. But I think a lot of times we grow up and we go into the workforce, and there's like so much put on our shoulders about being loyal to the company, or what are we going to be able to offer them. And I think it needs to be a two-way street. Like, I went into this for the first time thinking like, no, I know what I can offer them, but like, what am I going to get from this experience? Because it's going to be temporary. I'm not going to be there forever. And so what are you going to give me? What am I going to earn? What am I going to learn? What am I going to get at the end of this? And how's it going to get me to my next, stepping stone on the
Mhm.
river that I'm crossing, if you will? And so I went through the interview, and I got the job offer. And the hiring manager wanted to like have a final like 15-minute meeting with me to like bless it all. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. I was like, we need like 90 minutes. I have questions. I need to dig into this with you to make sure this is really going to work for me. So I said to this person who hired me, I said to them, I said, look, I'm interested in the work. But I have baggage that comes along with me, and that baggage is I speak at conferences, and I participate in this industry, and I occasionally freelance during my nights and weekends, and I'm working on writing a book. And one day I want to freelance, and one day I don't want to be in the corporate world. And I was like really honest and transparent about what my intentions were. And I said to him, I'm like, we can do great work while I'm here. I am committed to that, but I'm committed to a bigger vision for myself that goes beyond
Mhm.
you and this role and this company and this team. Just like we all have bigger ambitions than the role, the company, and the team. We just don't admit it to each other. And so if you hire me, I'm not giving up any of that shit for you. I'm not. I'm not sacrificing it at all. And they still hired me. And it was amazing because I was able to go into that like really transparent and honest. And I rephrase that as not being selfish, but it's selfful. It's being
Mhm.
selfful because at the end of the day, like we're all gonna die. We're all gonna die one day, and we're not gonna be answering emails and clicking and doing the things that we do. And at the end of the day, I want to be happy that I did what was best for me in the long run.
Yeah.
And I was selfful about my career. And so I encourage people when you're going and interviewing for a job, of course, we need to pay the bills. And sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get to do what you want to do. But at the same time, you have to ask yourself, like, what is this opportunity going to do for me? And how's it going to get me to the next step? Because it's all temporary. That, you're not going to be at that team or that company forever.
Yeah. So then if somebody is trying to do this in their own life, like they just heard you say that and they're like, "Yeah, I
Mhm.
love that selfful. Like that sounds amazing." And cuz we all, right? Like we scroll and we tap and hear
Yeah.
all these great things and then it's like we're going to change our lives based on what somebody said. And I think this is one of those things cuz it's like being self-full is a really good practice. But how does somebody start doing that? How if you're afraid to do it,
Mm.
you're worried about how to like did you practice ahead of time? Did you just go in did and sort of let your feelings fly? Like
Yeah.
how did you navigate this so it worked well?
So I'm going to say two things. First, I think it requires you as an individual to have a vision for yourself that's greater than just the next job, a vision for yourself that's
Mhm.
greater than the next opportunity. And I think it requires an acknowledgement that I keep saying the word temporary, but like I really do mean this when I say like stop. I tell people all the time, stop looking for your forever job or your forever boss or your forever team, because I will tell you, when you get into the corporate world, you're gonna get you're gonna when you the second you get comfortable, they're gonna reorg. that boss is going to move on, your team's going to get restructured, they're going to do layoffs, and then you quickly realize all of the things that made you go, I'm going to sign up for this and I think it's going to be my forever job, it's going to get taken away from you. And so you got to recognize that first and realize that in order to not get swept away in all that change, you have to have a longer term vision for yourself than that one job
Mhm.
or that team or what the things you signed on to when you joined it, because it's all temporary, right? And then I think the other thing is, like, how do you be self-full in spite of the imposter syndrome that you're having, or in spite of the desperation that you're having, or whatever the case might be, or your insecurity? So this is the second thing that I do. And I do this when I'm writing a LinkedIn post. I do this when I'm recording a video. I'm doing it right now with you. I'm doing it when I write an email to my audience, when I'm making a business decision, whatever the case might be. When I did the keynote last year, what I do is I close my eyes and I ask myself, like, what would the most confident, capable version of myself do? Or, and if I can't see myself in that, then what's the most confident, capable version? Like, what would the most confident, capable person that I admire do in this situation? And I just do that shit. I just do it. And I have to sometimes fake it. Like, sometimes I have to demonstrate confidence that I'm not really feeling. But that's like
Mhm.
the thing about confidence is it's not confidence isn't really I don't really think confidence is an internal thing, because I think we're all, because nobody knows what they're doing. And I think we're all insecure internally. We're always questioning ourselves. But confidence
Yeah.
is really just this, like, exchange of energy, right? Like, you're perceiving, I am putting on a demonstration of confidence for you and everybody who's watching, and you are returning that back to me in the way you interact with me, or because you're viewing me as confident, and so then that makes me feel confident because I'm feeding off the energy you're giving back to me, because I that's what I'm mirroring for you. Eh, so it requires a level of faking it and and having that vision for yourself and imagining yourself in that future position or that state or that mindset, and then making decisions that lead towards it. And that's a little woo
Yeah.
woo, but it's truly what I do.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, but also, I talk a lot about having an archetype too, like something that you envision for yourself long term. Because a lot of times we have a lot of mentoring at work, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about mentoring,
Mm,
because I think that mentoring goes wrong a lot of times. It's very one sided. It's kind of
yeah.
like it feels very forced. People come together because they're like, I want you to mentor me on this one thing. And, it can work, but I really think that that long term vision piece, that archetype of who do I want to be as a person? Like
Mm,
when I put my head on my pillow, or like we said, everybody dies. When I'm at
mhm.
my final hours of my life and I look back and think, here's everything that happened. Like, what do I want my highlights reel to be? What am I going to be proud of? Who do how do I want people to speak about me after I'm gone and remember me and things like that? And so, those archetypes, those long term pieces, you know, uh, that I think a lot of times helps you make the right choice or take the right action, because as
Yeah.
you were talking about that whole idea of like, confidence not really being a feeling, sometimes
Mhm.
it's just being willing to take the action to say, I see the bigger picture for me and I'm going to step toward it, even if I don't really get how it all comes together right now.
Yeah.
This leans toward that, and so I'm going to do it. um I've
Yeah,
always been
I
really bad at like planning things, and like, how did you get from here to here? I don't know, just kind of knew.
it's so hard because I think and what I'm about to say, it's not like not like I'm great at this every single day. It's less often than I think most people would recognize or even admit to myself, I suppose. But um I don't know. I'm a firm believer that, like, when you're doing things that aren't meant for you, the universe is going to make you uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah.
And you have to get really quiet with yourself to know, like, is this uncomfortability, if you will, this discomfort that I'm experiencing, is it because I'm I'm doing the right thing and I'm, chugging along on the treadmill of life, and,
Hmm.
I'm doing it sweaty and I'm doing it good? Or am I dying inside? Is my soul being crushed by doing this? And so, like, last year, like, a good example of this, last year I worked on rebuilding my website for my company. and did a little rebrand. And my one of my contractors who specializes in branding, she had me do a whole exercise on figuring out like what is my archetype as a professional brand. And it was really enlightening for me to go like, oh yes, I very much connect with this version of myself, and this is how I show up authentically and all of that stuff. And when you can like figure out how you show up as you, and you're not trying to be some other version of yourself, and we can get really deep and dark with not dark with this. We can get really deep with this because I think
Yeah.
this like all intersects with me being a gay man and growing up in the closet until I was in my early 20s. I'm very keenly aware of what it's like to like be a different version of you. When you step into whatever that authenticity is, it's almost effortless. It's like
Yeah.
you don't have to think about the words that you're saying or how you're saying it because you're not trying to be something that you're not. You're just being you. And so I don't know. I'm always thinking about when I'm making progress or making a decision or whatever. You know, it doesn't align with who I want to be authentically because I think sometimes we get stuck trying to be other versions of other people.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you
Hmm.
can see how easy that is too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, open any app on your phone and it can let you know exactly how you're not doing it well enough, good enough, right enough. You need
Hmm.
one more exercise routine, supplement, makeup product, course, class, training, certificate, degree, right? Like, I mean, I was thinking that as I try to not, I went a long time being very good about not having Instagram on my phone.
Mm.
And I was scrolling through Instagram and I'm like, my goodness, it's just like ad after ad after ad after ad, basically, whether it's in the form of an ad or it's in the form of somebody influencing me as an ad.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that talks to you in this world about who you are is not okay. And
No. Yeah.
so I mean, maybe like if I can ask you, because you shared,
Mhm.
like, so you came out of the closet, so you were living a life that was not true to you, or you were having to hide parts of you and not share fully. Like, when you went through that, like, what was the process of discovering and feeling comfortable with who you are? Because I don't think that's an uncommon thing for people. I mean, maybe the
Yeah.
scenario is different for everyone, but feeling true to who you are and just
Yeah.
showing up as you and being like, take it or leave it, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, for a lot of gay and queer youth, at least, in my it's much different now than it was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like when I was growing up and then in high school, like I thought I was the only gay kid in high school, out of a class of 400 people. And like that's ridiculous. Of course I wasn't, you know what I mean? But you feel like that.
Yeah.
And then you learn, there's a concept of code switching. You learn to behave in certain ways and act in certain ways to protect yourself. And as a result, a lot of gay people grow up not having a normal adolescence because they, there isn't a default interaction between the sexes, as there is with,
Mhm.
you know, straight boys and straight girls. You flirt, you date, you da 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 da, and a lot of gay kids don't ever have that, and because they are constantly, 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 constantly in a state of showing up in a way that makes everyone else comfortable and doesn't question them. And then the way people, the and I do this, I still do it. It's still a behavior of mine. The way a lot of times gay people show up is they're always the funny person. They're always the life of the party. And it's because one of the things I shared at this keynote I did last year, it's because everyone loves a funny person more than they hate a gay person. And so
Ugh.
a lot of gay people show up as the funny life of the party because it's a way to be a little bit yourself, but under the guise of like, I'm just being a comedian, I'm just being the funny guy. Or they end up in
Yeah.
theater because they get to live these different versions of themselves, that everyone then applauds and accepts, and otherwise they wouldn't. So for me, when eventually what happens is that when you are inauthentic, and I won't even relate this to being gay, but I'll relate this to anybody. When you are living inauthentically, your relationships with other people become superficial because you run out of things to talk about with that fake person you created. And so eventually all you talk about is the weather with your parents, or the only thing you talk about is, oh, what happened to Sally? Because you have drama at work to talk about, because you have this whole other life that you can't talk about. So you talk about superficial things. And then eventually that gets like, it really eats at you. And you want to be able to share with your friends and your family, like, oh, I have this great relationship and I'm so happy. And eventually it becomes overwhelming. And you're just like, fuck it, I can't do it anymore. I can't show up as whatever this version of you that I created. And so you eventually burst out of that. And I
Mhm.
think for a lot of people, going full circle back to being selfful in your job search and whatnot, a lot of people go into interviews creating this version of themselves to appease that hiring manager, or they show up to work 9 to 5 as a totally different person than they are at home, and it eats at you. And I always imagine showing up to an interview as a different version of yourself that you think is what they want from you. And then my what I always tell people is like, well, what if they hire that person? What if they hire that
Right.
person you created? Now you got to show up 9 to 5 as this fake ass thing that you created. Like, talk about creating imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
You've turned yourself into an imposter because you showed up
Yeah.
as this other version of yourself.
Yeah.
I'll stop talking here in a second, but I'll say this is like, eventually you have to, when you choose to be an authentic version of yourself, you're gonna piss some people off. You're gonna piss off your family if you come out as gay. You're gonna lose friends, or if you choose to be authentic version of yourself, some people are not gonna like you. You might be a teacher leaving the classroom, and the parents are gonna be mad at you. The other teachers are gonna be mad at you. Well, they were never in your corner in the first place. You can't make everybody happy and then take care of yourself at the same time. So I don't know. I hope that resonates.
I think it will. And you just said that you're going to make these choices. You can't make everybody happy. And that can feel really hard the whole time you're still saying to yourself, like, well, these people were never really my friends, or they were really never in my corner, or it can still feel really hard and
Oh,
heartbreaking. And
yeah.
I think there's this, like, going back to this, I don't know, it has nothing to do with imposter syndrome, but there's like that feeling of like I should feel a certain way, or other people feel a certain way when they say, "Oh, well, I just, those people were never my people anyways." No, that feels horrible no matter who you are, right? To have to go through that. It's not like you reached a point in life where you made a decision to leave your job, or
Mhm.
share something about yourself with somebody, and then you tell them and then they interpret it, and like that still just might feel like ick, and you're going to have to just let it be that and know that those weren't my people and it feels icky, and that's just kind of how it lands.
Yeah, I mean,
And
you're gonna have your fifis about it. We're all gonna have our feelings, and you get to sit with
yeah.
that, and it really is, it's sad because the people you thought were there for you aren't there for you.
Yeah.
Like, that's a valid set of feelings to have, and
Yeah.
you should take the time to feel that, and then but then also on the other side of it, the more you step into being the version of yourself and making decisions that are for that version of yourself, you're gonna find a whole other group of people that are there to applaud you and cheer you on,
Yeah.
and those are really your people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Good.
Yeah. All
What
right. So
else?
what next?
We need like a break for a second,
Yeah,
like
take a drink. Yeah, we were talking about what our beverage of choice
to hold
was.
space for that, you know? Oh.
Mine's Yours is, what is it?
It's
Oat milk and sugar?
coffee and sugar and oat milk.
I'm drinking electrolyte water right now.
Well, that's special.
So, yeah. I'm coming off the end of a cold, and so I've been just hydrating a lot.
That's good. What else do we
Oh,
wanna talk about?
we
I'm
should
looking.
talk about, you wrote a book, okay? I wanna talk to you about this,
Okay.
okay? Because you, again, not to belabor the, like, you were catching shoplifters, right?
Yeah.
And then here you are, and you're this guy who writes a book about instructional design
Hmm.
and gets it published, and amazing. I
Sure.
was having a conversation with someone the other day. We were doing an exploratory session, and one of the things that the person surfaced just through our discussion was they had this desire to write a book someday. And what they
Mm.
said to me is, "I don't know how to write a book though." And I was like, "Huh, okay." And we sort of let it sit. And a couple days later, I saw something on YouTube, and I saw a guy that he grew up without a father, It's I don't know what he's called. It's something like Dad Teaches You How or something like that.
Sure.
Maybe the rest of the world knows who this person is. He's pretty popular, I guess. But it's like this guy who's in his 60s now, and he teaches you like stuff your dad would teach you because
Mm,
he never had a dad growing up, and he wished he had a dad to teach him how to change a flat tire or tie a tie or all this stuff. So he's become wildly popular on YouTube, and he wrote a book. And here's this guy who, probably had a start in life that was challenging and got to the
yeah.
point where he's on YouTube, he's got millions of followers, he's written a book. And I sent that to this person and I was just like, "Hey, this guy wrote a book." Like I'm sure he didn't know how to do it either. So tell me
Sure.
about you writing a book and how did you know how to write a book?
Well, okay. So that there's some tactical stuff that prepared me to write a book. And then there's some stuff that I had to figure out on my own. So I'll talk about the tactical stuff first. And this is something also that I've learned about growing your career is this concept of like I've called it like compounding skills, but I think it's formally called skill stacking or something along those lines.
Mhm.
So, when you look back at like the arc of your career, you were constantly collecting skills and experiences that you find reasons to reuse them in ways that you would have never imagined when you first obtained them. So I remember when I was still catching shoplifters before I ever got into this industry or knew anything about it. I remember I was like, I really would love to write a book on something one day and do YouTube stuff. And like, I wanted everything I'm doing now is like, I had this idea of like, I would love to do something like that one day in the future,
Yeah.
but who knows what. And so then I got my job in loss prevention, or I got my job in training others how to catch shoplifters. And I got exposed to a couple of really key things that helped me in ways I didn't realize. So, for example, we would use Adobe InDesign to create training manuals and facilitator guides and participant guides. And for those of you who might be watching or aren't familiar, Adobe InDesign is like Microsoft Word on steroids. And it's the same program that they use to lay out magazines and books and all of this stuff that I knew, but we didn't use it in that way. We used it for other print documentation. And so I collected that skill. I learned how to use Adobe InDesign. And I also worked on like I learned a little bit about visual design and I learned about print production because we would print these manuals and send them out. And then that went in my back pocket with no thought that I would ever use that to write a book. Then fast forward a few years later, I started working at a custom e-learning development company called Artisan Learning, and I was the creative director for a sister company of theirs called E-Learning Uncovered, which
Mhm.
is books and training and resources on all things e-learning instructional design, very similar to what I'm doing now. And as part of my role there, I was responsible for helping write, update, and publish out the e-learning uncovered books on articulate storyline and different authoring tools. And so I learned what it took to design a cover and write a book and create a table of contents and how to structure something like that. And that went into my back pocket. And so then when I started leading a team of instructional designers, my first 9 months on this team of people who knew nothing about instructional design, I we went through the whole process of instructional design and e-learning development. And at the end of it, I realized I was like, oh, I could write a book on this. Like this is I gave these people everything I wish I had when I was starting. Maybe I could put this into a book. So I started writing my book, and I wrote like a chapter, and then I sat on it for like 6 months. And when you write a book, it's a real mind fuck because you have this perception that you need to put everything you could possibly say about a given topic into this book. You have to be like so completely comprehensive. So I sat on it, I sat on it, I sat on it, overwhelmed, overwhelmed, overwhelmed. And then I did two things. I decided like, "Ugh, I really got to get this book done." So the first thing that I did is I announced on LinkedIn, this would have been back in like 2016, 2017. I was like, I'm writing a book and it's going to be out at the end of March. And I don't know, I was just going to make it happen. So I did that. So I put myself in a corner, and that's where I learned how to FITFO it. That's another acronym I have, like figure it the fuck out. So I put myself in a corner. I was like, I got to FITFO this, right? And then the second thing that I did is I started looking at other books that had nothing to do with my industry, and I was like, let me reverse engineer this. And I didn't look at the content. I looked at like how much are they talking about a given topic in a section or a chapter, and I realized it's like, oh, it's just like it's just like a long form blog post that gives some practical tips, and it's just those collected with some transitions in between each chapter. And so then once I discovered that, I realized like it made it much simpler because I'm like, okay, today I'm going to write, and I just thought of them as blog posts. I'm going to write the blog post on storyboarding, and I'm going to write the blog post on blah blah blah. And then before you knew it, all of those came together, and now I have, and then you add transitions and chapters and da 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 da, and you had a book. So it was a combination of like capitalizing on a whole host of skills that I picked up over the years, and then not over complicating what it meant to write a book.
All right. So what I heard you say, and I think the like lift and shift from this, like if someone's not interested in writing a book and they're like, what are they talking about right now? Why did Aaron ask him about writing a book? That's so weird and
Mhm,
specific. You kept saying like I had a skill and I sort of just like tucked it in my back pocket, and it was like a skills accumulation over time. And
yeah,
it's not that you really knew someday that you were going to use X for Y purpose, but everything you do, and I tell people this so often, like there is no such thing as a bad experience because you're always going to walk away from something, right? Even the worst job you've ever had, I could probably sit down and write 10 things I took away from that worst job I ever had. And those
mhm,
things do help you in the weirdest ways that you don't expect, you know? And so, like, you were talking about, okay, you worked catching shoplifters. And then, so these are for my pivoters, right? You took something you knew, the skill
mhm,
of catching shoplifters, and you moved a little bit and you said, I'm going to go teach other people how to do this.
yep,
And so that was your shift. You had a commonality of the knowledge, your credibility as a person who knows how to catch shoplifters, and then
mhm,
you went and did it in a different discipline. So instead of
mhm,
catching them, you went and taught people how to do that.
mhm,
And then you took the teaching part and you learned that and you gathered more information. And then you said, now I'm going to go and I'm going to really lean harder into this whole like teaching people how to do stuff. And maybe it's not about shoplifting now, maybe it's
yep,
about other topics. And then you made that break into instructional design, learning and development space. And then there's all like the micro growths that happen within that space. And then you use that whole culmination to launch your own company. And so I want people to take that away from this conversation that, all of these things come together a little bit, that nobody's got it figured out. Everything that you're doing is creating just all of these little tools in your backpack of life.
mhm,
And you can create little bridges. And I think that's the smartest thing to do is when you're looking to make a change in your life, look at what you have in your inventory and then say, what can I use to put me in a new environment doing something I'm really good at where I'm also going to learn something new.
yeah, I
So
totally
I don't
agree,
know if you
and
were that intentional about it, right? But that's it, right? Like there was always a commonality or something that eased that next jump for you.
yeah, absolutely. And I can go back all the way to when I was in high school, being a theater drama geek. Like, I don't think I would be able to do what I do now in terms of being on YouTube or video if I hadn't had that experience. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and in a weird way, I me doing YouTube or doing this or speaking at conferences is a really great way for me to like I still get to scratch that little theater itch because I think of everything I do as like it's a little production, you know?
Yeah.
And then I would have never been able to create my own courses if I didn't, if I didn't have the opportunity to see how to do that at scale when I did my LinkedIn learning course. That taught me how to do something. And so I think to your point, there isn't a bad experience. And the other thing too is like if you're a career pivoter and you're learning some new skill set and you haven't made it into your ultimate goal yet, let's say you get a job that's kind of halfway to where you want it to be, where you want to be. The thing is you're going to find an excuse to utilize those skills that you want to continue working on. You're going to find a reason to be the person who, you know, helps train the team if that's what you want to be as a trainer or an instructional designer. You're going to find a reason to create stuff. Like when I was
Mhm.
working in the stores catching shoplifters, um, I first learned about the team that I ended up working on. They would send out all the training materials to us, and like I was like, I would just love to work on that team. And so then I started like I was the one who would start creating training for our district, and I started like emulating the stuff that they were doing for the whole company for our little district in Arizona,
Mhm.
which then, like, helped tee me up for, "Yeah, I'm the perfect person for this because I'm already kinda doing it for you." because I found a reason to, So
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Like if you're really passionate about something, you'll find reasons to utilize those skills in ways that you may not anticipate. When you're gaining them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish more people saw that sometimes, because I do deal with a lot of people who, okay, I'm going to talk instructional design just for 1 minute. Like, people come to
It's fine.
me and they say, I have this resume and I want to go into instructional design. And it's like, that A to Q, will say, might not be the first jump, right? Like, we might need to find what B is. And
Mhm.
B might not look as sexy as what Q looks like. And it might not, come with all the bells and whistles that you see everybody posting again about on LinkedIn and how great and
Yep.
all this and that. But like, those are the steps that a lot of people who actually make it take. It's not, a lot of us aren't going A to Q. I
No.
would I would argue we found other letters that we didn't even know existed between there, because there were so many little steps that it took to get to Q before we got there from A.
And in
And
and in order to gain that perspective, you have to realize that, your step from A to B, B is temporary, and your step from B to C, C is temporary because it's gonna get you
Mhm.
to D, and then that's gonna get you to E, and then it'll eventually get you to Q, but all of those stepping stones were temporary, and it wasn't your forever job. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
get really too obsessed finding that one perfect team on that one perfect company on that one perfect job with that one perfect salary. And LinkedIn does just a horrible job
I
promoting it because all you hear
know.
about is
Sorry.
that's okay. All you hear about is the six figures and the fully remote and the financial freedom. And it festers this unrealistic dream that people are chasing that it's not that it's unrealistic, it's unrealistic in a single leap.
All right, I'm gonna try to unmute. I just
That's
got an
okay.
Amazon package
Oh,
delivered, and
that's
my
exciting.
dog is defending the porch. So, Coco, shh. She doesn't know I'm live streaming right
That's
now. She
okay.
didn't get the memo. Be quiet.
Right.
um, yeah, all that. Yeah, all that to say, I wish people didn't fall in love. That's what I was gonna say to you before my dog started barking.
Mm,
Dream jobs. If there was something that made me want to throw up in my mouth, it's dream jobs. I
yeah.
hate dream jobs. I hate that, because first of all, and I'm in the business of helping people get jobs. Like, jobs are a means to an end. It's called a job because you have to go there, and they give you money because you probably wouldn't choose to go there if they weren't paying you. Right? Like,
Mhm.
this is a transaction. And yes, I hope you enjoy it. And yes, there are nice people who we work with, and it's fun, and there are challenges, and it can be interesting, but like, this idea of a dream job, I mean, give me your take on this. Like, am I alone? I hate it,
No,
because I
I
think it makes people just feel like they're not doing it right if they're not, like, in
no,
love every day of their life they go to work.
I agree. I totally agree with you, and it's this, I've talked about this before. First off, like, I think you have to recognize that your career and your job are 2 separate things, and I think a
Mm,
lot of people get their whole identity of their career t entwined entangled with their job, and your job is a temporary thing that you're at right now. So, like, there's a big difference between a dream career and a dream job. I have a dream career, but my job of what I'm doing right now contributes to that, but it's a temporary thing, and the dream is bigger than just the individual job, right?
mhm.
And I was talking with somebody that I mentored. This was a couple years ago now, and I see this. I was talking with somebody yesterday who was demonstrating this to me. People, when you think of a dream job, or you conflate your job and your career, and then you don't have the perspective that what you're doing is temporary, you find yourself getting quickly disappointed when that job or that team or that manager, that company doesn't fulfill everything that you made it out to be, this dream thing that you had, or that what you thought you were signing up for. And I was mentoring this person who I worked with, and she was just really down and in a funk because her boss didn't see the vision for the vision she had, and they weren't going to do what she wanted to do the way she wanted to do it, and they were all legitimate frustrations,
Mhm.
and she was just completely down about it. And I said to her, I'm like, why do you care anymore? Why do you care? Why do you care? Why do you care that your boss doesn't see your vision? Why does it matter? Why does it matter so much that you're going to get in such a funk about it that you're putting so much energy into other people not doing the thing you want it to do or the thing you want it the way you want it to be. Companies are going to do what companies do, and bosses are going to do what bosses do. And you can make your best effort. And it really does suck when you have a vision for something that's bigger than what they can see. But if they don't do it, that's fine. That's their choice. What are you going to do about it? It's temporary. So eventually you just go, great, I'm going to move the fuck on and go, and I'll go get something else. But again, it requires that perspective that, you're probably getting so disappointed that it's not your dream job, but you're also kind of assuming that you're going to be there forever. If you can make the assumption you're not going to be there forever and let go of the idea that has to be your entire dream, then I think that makes it an easier pill to swallow.
I love that. And as you were saying that, I picture like a this sounds cheesy, but like a dream life. And I don't mean a dream life, but I mean like your life as a pie. And even
Yeah.
when you're building a dream career, that's still a slice of it, right? Like
Yeah.
like it's no different than when somebody says, "Oh, when you invest, you need to diversify your portfolio." It's the same thing with when you look at your life, right? Like when you invest you and you look at your time, your energy, your effort, your love, your care, like all of these feelings and emotions and things that make up you, how are you investing that? And like a career and a job, those are really important things because you spend a lot of time doing it, a career, right? A
Mhm.
lot of years and time and effort and energy go into it. And jobs, again, jobs make money, jobs enable things. I work with people who are like, look, I went into this job, I thought it was going to give me purpose. Turns out it doesn't pay the bills, and that doesn't feel very purposeful. So like money is a big part of it too, because if you have the right dollars, you can go take a trip or buy a gift or
Sure.
remodel your home or whatever.
Yep.
And so this whole idea of just like thinking more diversified about your life. What are the pieces and parts that matter, and minimizing, because I've been guilty of that. Like I have an idea at work and I think, "Oh, why are they not seeing this?" or, "Why is this not working?" And it can upset you. And then you take that home and you're crabby with your kids or you're crabby with your family. And sometimes I catch myself and I look at that and I think, whoa, wait a minute. Like
Mhm.
my life is so much bigger than what happens at work
Yep.
and my career, right? Like me being a great mom to my two kids has nothing to do with my career. And sometimes I have to think about, am I treating my career the right way so that I'm making my kids the priority? Because they're going to be with me the longest.
Yeah.
And so I really love when we get away from this like hyper romanticization of jobs and careers, and you start to think more about your life, yourself as a person, how you feel, how you show up, what are your relationships. And yes, the good and the bad will come and go, but I think when you're more diversified in what matters in life, like those kicks
Mm.
in one department, you don't feel them as much because you've got more going on elsewhere.
Yeah. You have to be able to know what you want. And it's bigger than just the job or the career. You have to know what you want wholly for your life or
Yeah.
holistically for your life. And then how do those different puzzle pieces fit together? And I think a lot of this is fed from, you and I are around the same age. And I know a lot of other people who are listening have this experience, but we grow up being taught that, you go to high school and then you graduate and then you go get your degree and you get into a bunch of student debt and you're supposed to figure out what you want to do forever at 18, like
Mhm.
as if like you have any business having
with
that.
with no fundamental knowledge of what's out there.
No, right? And then you go to college and then you graduate and you're supposed to get a corporate job and climb the corporate
Yeah.
ladder and then stay there because you're supposed to be loyal because loyalty pays
Yeah.
off, right? And
Yeah.
then, at 62 and a half, I don't know what the retirement age now, I think it's like 67,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then you retire and you go to Boca Raton if you like the humidity, or you come to Sun City, Arizona if you like a dry heat, and then you retire into the sunset. And you were supposed to stay at wherever and get your pension. And it's like none of that shit exists anymore, like it did
Yeah.
for our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation. And and so I think a lot of times we set ourselves up for disappointment and failure when we try to follow those rules that don't no longer work like
Yeah.
they used to, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. We've sort of outgrown those rules and using them still as a
Years ago.
yardstick. Yeah.
Years ago.
Using those as a yardstick is like a surefire way to be frustrated
Mhm.
for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
It's 1 o'clock Eastern. I don't know how
It's
that happened.
crazy.
Um, So usually I ask everybody at the end, well, 2 things. 1, I do want you to plug all the stuff, like where people can find you and all that jazz. But then, more importantly, before you do that, I always ask, and you've given so much. So I'm like, give me one more piece of
Yeah,
advice.
that's fine.
Best piece of advice, either, you like to give or that
Mm.
someone has given you that,
I am usually really bad at, like, "Here's the one last question," and I'm like, "I don't
yeah.
know," but I got one. This was easy.
Okay.
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 My very first mentor boss person in my career, his name was Tim as well, by the way. One of the things he told me when he was hiring me, this was back when I was still catching shoplifters, he said to me, he said, "As your boss, mentor person, my
Did he
job."
actually say that?
No, but that's how
Yeah.
I say it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, he was like, as your boss or mentor, my
Or
job
person.
is to, um, uh, open provide you opportunities and remove roadblocks and provide guidance and to guide you along the way of your professional development. But at the end of the day, you gotta do it. I can't do it for you. And he
Yeah.
said, "I can't care," and I say this to all of the people I mentor now, "I can't care more about your career and your goals more than you care about it for yourself." And I think a lot of times to your point, why a lot of mentorships don't work is because we want we want other people to do the work for us and make the big decisions for us, and they can't do that. And you have to care about your life and your career more than anyone else can care about it. Not your family, not your friends, not your coworkers, not your boss, not your mentor, because they got their own shit to worry about, and you got to worry about
Yeah.
your own shit too.
Mic drop. Man,
Yeah, I
tell
know.
people tell people where to find you.
I think I need to write another book.
Yeah.
You can find me at the eLearning Designers Academy at elearningacademy.io, and we have a free community. And we also have a cohort that is it's currently open for enrollment, and it closes next Friday. And we're including 6 months of storyline access as part of that. And so check all that out.
Yeah, and people definitely should. I will say, Tim, it's been such a pleasure becoming friends with one another, and just in this short time, like we've been able to help each other out here and there, and do some stuff and learn from one another. And so it's rare to come across a stranger where I'm like, I love, Tim tells people exactly, how they need to hear it. It's always with a touch of humor and a touch of kindness, but
Mm.
there's experience and there's honesty behind it, and I think that that's more of a voice that needs to be heard, especially on these social platforms where there's lots to be heard. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk, and hope you have a good rest of your Friday. I know it's not quite
Yeah.
lunchtime for you yet in Arizona,
No, my
but
day's just starting. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I hope you
So
have a good Friday and a good weekend.
thank you.
And thank to everyone who I've been watching the chat a little bit. So thank you for everybody who tuned in.
Awesome. All right, take care, everybody.
Bye all.